This was by far the worst story I ever experienced with a resistant client or somebody showing what is known as resistance in a therapy session. When you say things and it doesn't matter what you say or how you say it, the person is never really going toward a positive change. When you are the hypnotherapist or the NLP coach or whatever you want, just people don't follow what you want, or like they always argue, stuff like that. This one was way worse though, because of something I'm going to detail. It was going way beyond just somebody arguing with you. Basically, I just had, I think, 1 year of experience at this point, 1 year of experience as a therapist. Longer than that if we count all the NLP books I had been reading up to that point, and the seminars of Richard Bandler, watching on my screen, of course, but in terms of real life experience, I was barely at 1 year. So I wasn't really advanced yet. I was starting to have some skills, but not advanced. And one thing that immediately caught my attention with that guy, that person who entered my house to receive a therapy session, he heard about me, I think I had left a card to a doctor or something, and he discovered me. I'm sure he discovered me through a card I had given. Not sure whom again, but it was a call I had given. Called me, wanted to get a session. Okay, fine. He was kind of evasive on why he wanted a session, but he wanted to come here, so I greeted him in my home. And the first thing that caught my attention and should have even made me more alert on what was going to happen, he took his coat out, his jacket off of his shoulders, and was going to put it on the coat tree, but he left it just on the side of the coat tree. So it was right here, and he left it like here on the side. As a matter of fact, so his coat fell on the ground. And I looked at that, but he seemed completely normal, like he didn't even notice that. So I was like, okay, but on the moment I was just surprised, and I thought maybe he's just blind, or he has some visual problem, and I was so focused on what I'm gonna say during the session that I didn't really took that into consideration, but it was going to unveil the bigger problem during that session. But so first thing that happens, the guy is leaving the coat on the side on the ground, his jacket on the ground, as if it was normal. Then we sat down and he started to tell me about an anxiety problem in his relationship with his wife, basically. Or like, he didn't really say wife, but like partner. An anxiety problem with her. That was kind of what I was understanding up to that point. But then I asked some questions about, more specifically, can you tell me what happens or what happened? Did you have arguments? Were you into a conflict with her? And every time I was starting to ask for more specific information, he was completely shifting the topic of conversation. Like, literally impossible to answer just one simple sentence. He was always drifting into the parallel things that had nothing to do with what I had been asking. He was constantly jumping into something else and something else and something else. And pretty early, for example, he started giving me a lecture about how heroin is causing addictions, and how addictive some substance can be, like heroin and other substances, some that I didn't even know of. And I thought, okay, so are we talking about a drug addiction problem then? But then I asked about this. Okay, so you are a drug addict, that's what you're trying to tell me? And same thing, he shifted toward, something about stars in the sky, and how stars are implying something into the meaning of the person we are. I was starting to get completely lost, like, where the hell is he going? And I would only learn later that actually he was suffering from an dissociative personality disorder. So he was constantly drifting into different ideas completely randomly, and was very tough for him to stay focused on one thing. But I didn't know that at this point, and since I was not really experienced yet, I thought the problem was coming from me. Maybe I was not understanding correctly what he was talking about, whereas no, I was perfectly understanding. It was just that his brain was working differently because of this mental disorder. His brain was not working in the same way that most people. But basically, after 2 or 3 shots like that, me asking specific questions and him drifting into some other topics of conversation that had nothing to do with what we were talking about. At some point, I had like from being completely lost, I had like a lightning spark of genius. Those moments, you know, when you just let go because you know you have zero control, which was the case in that situation. I really had zero control over the conversation and over the therapeutic process that was supposed to happen here. And I was just like, there's not really anything I think I can do, like I'm just lost. And this spark came to my mind of, okay, come back to basic pacing and leading. This guy is weird, he's complete nonsense, let's be complete nonsense myself in turn. I'm not saying it was making any sense. I'm just saying it was what came to my mind at this point. It just came in my mind, like, okay, let's mirror that guy. Let's do the same thing and let's be as weird as he was. And I started telling a story about a magician, because I was a magician before when I was a kid, but I went to many events like that, and I started telling a story during that session of a magician I had seen someday in some event who made a trick with an ashtray, and at some point he took the ashtray. So I had physically an ashtray on the table because my dad was smoking, so I had an ashtray over there. But as I was telling the story of this magician playing with an ashtray, I took the ashtray in my hand and I slammed it on the table, and he did this, and BAM! Like this. But really strong, and it didn't break completely, but like pieces of it broke on the table, which was a shock. Pattern interrupt. This is where it comes in. When you shock the person just enough to make them conscious again about something. And this guy interrupted himself, and he started looking at me like this, like, but why did you do that? And I said, without even knowing what I was doing, I said, I don't know, why do you think I did? And and that's where he started to get back into a normal human being conversation with, you know, actually, I know sometimes I have trouble to gather thoughts together. I'm suffering from an anxiety disorder, the dissociative personality disorder, and he told me he was under medication, and he said, yeah, sorry, I know sometimes I have trouble to stay articulate, but... And so, okay, now it started to make sense. But I had no conscious understanding prior to this that by mirroring his weird behavior, I would get a response. That was just coming from my intuition. But this ashtray on the table caused a pattern interrupt for him. And by the way, this is a new course I have developed that is down in the description on the first link about pattern interrupts and how to use them. But back in the day, I didn't know how to use it. I just did it like intuitively. I think maybe a spark of genius coming from Bandler when I was watching him, stuff like that. But this shock made him get back into the present moment and stop evaporating into his thoughts and into his millions of ideas and stuff that was completely disorganized and wasn't making any sense for the conversation at hand. So from there, and him explaining to me more in detail what his disorder was about and how he was being treated with medical treatment for years and years. Okay, it started to make sense piece by piece, and actually I think I heard from another person who was doing therapy in my hometown. I think I heard that guy was actually getting back into the hospital a few weeks later maybe. So in the end, I don't even think the session really brought any big change, or maybe it did. I didn't see that guy again. But the big lesson for me here was, wow, by following my intuition, even when it doesn't make any sense, it works. At least it is producing some positive effect. Because from there, I was getting somewhere with that guy, because at least I could understand what was happening from the beginning of the session. It was complete nonsense and I had no idea of what it all meant. So, big lesson: when you're lost, the first thing that pops up in your mind, do it. It may not be the thing that will lead to the end of the session, but it will probably be the best thing to say at this particular moment in time. And as I said, if you want to develop your skills with pattern interrupts, it is something I have developed recently. 19 techniques down below to develop your skills and be able to use a pattern interrupt like that, not as shocking as breaking something physically on the table, but sometimes it is much more subtle in the way you communicate, in the way you talk to the person. You can induce a certain shock in the phrase you're saying, some different intonation or something that will break their loop of negative thoughts or endless talking that is leading nowhere. Many times when people talk and talk and talk, it is just to cover their anxiety. They are trying to put a wall of words between you and them to prevent you from asking uncomfortable questions. And so using a pattern interrupt allows you to break, like to almost like dig a hole inside this wall of words they have been putting up between the two of you, and you can interact with the real unconscious mind that is behind that, the person who is in front of you. That is something very relevant with pattern interrupts that you can use in your sessions or in general with people if you like to play with their minds a little bit. And I guess I will see you in the next video.